Hey YouTube, welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. Mr. Terry as I continue my search for historical knowledge found here on the internet. Alright, today's video has been the usual lately, coming from our awesome patrons, and they suggested this video, which is the Vorkuta Gulag, Hellhole of the USSR. And this is by a channel favorite, Simple History. So, okay, so the Gulag is famous in meme culture, and it's sad because it is truly a horrific part of recent world history and world history as a whole. But if this video is going to be telling me about like the worst of the worst gulags, yikes, we might be in for a ride here. So we'll get into this in just a second. The original video link is down below. Make sure you support Simple History. They're awesome, do great content. And you definitely want to subscribe to them, and at the very least get this original video, a view, and a like. And if you haven't subbed to my channel, love to have you around, be a part of our community. Hit that sub button, like this video as well, and I think we're going to be all set. All right, and with the last thing before I guess we got to go is to the Gulag.
This episode is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet. It's light, sleek, strong, and industrial. It doesn't fold or awkwardly bulge in your back pocket, and it's seriously changed our whole pocket situation.
I have like a George
Most people are still carrying wallets designed in the 90s. Why have we moved on from large flip phones to smartphones, but still carry bulky wallets? The Ridge Wallet. It holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash, and there's over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. Seriously, I really love this thing. But don't take my word for it. Listen to their 30,000 five-star reviews. The durable materials means that each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You could buy this one wallet and carry it for life. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it, they'll let you test drive it for 45 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/simplehistory. That's ridge.com/simplehistory and use the code SIMPLEHISTORY.
They probably needed that.
The Vorkuta Gulag, 1932
Wait, I gotta work on my Russian here. Let's see.
History.
Vorkuta.
The Vorkuta Gulag,
Vorkuta.
1932 to 1962.
62. 30 years. What?
The Soviet Gulag prison system, set up in the 1920s by the ruling Communist Party, were a series of forced labor camps. They held prisoners in harsh living conditions, where any treatment was expected to be extreme and inhumane. Prisoners were both Soviet and foreign, the camp holding prisoners of war, dissidents, political prisoners, enemies of the state, and common criminals.
Interesting that, like a famous thing that a lot of you might know is that Stalin was sent to basically like gulags in a way, not really, but or like into Siberian camps and stuff like that when he had, I think, escaped like multiple times, so he knows what these hard labor camps are like, but then of course continues to use them when he was in rule.
Their diet provided little sustenance, leaving many near starvation. Beatings were common in the Gulag system, often brutal and unforgiving. Prisoners were sentenced for multiple reasons. For example, John H. Noble was arrested on charges of spying. The Noble's camera manufacturing company was merged with other German companies by the Soviets shortly after World War II. It was common for the Soviet authorities to arrest citizens in order to seize their property, and they were often given charges that would be hopeless in fighting. Stalin found the camps to be an efficient way to boost his country's industrialization, and no one was truly safe.
Yeah, Stalin, that's not his real name, by the way. Stalin, Man of Steel, as it's more translated, was fixated on industrializing on the Soviet Union very, very quickly, right? It was had these 5-year plans with production quotas, and the core of the industrialization was going to be hard, like metallurgy, okay, hard, heavy machinery and stuff like that. That's what I meant. And I guess this makes sense a bit now of how you can reach those quotas if maybe the backbone, not necessarily in those factories or something, but other economic parts of the Soviet economy could be done by basically slave labor. They were saying they were seizing property, able to seize property, and that's one way they seize property is what, trump up some charges on them so they can seize it, and for the betterment of the USSR, right?
Many of these prisoners never made it out alive. often being worked to death or dying of malnutrition. Among the worst of the gulags was the much-feared Vorkuta Gulag, known by the official title Vorkuta Corrective Special Labor Camp No. 6. Based near a coal mining community in the Komi Republic of West Russia, just north of the Arctic Circle, the Vorkuta Gulag was established in 1932, remaining active until 1962, and contained over 73,000 prisoners during its peak.
Jeez.
The prisoners were assigned to...
I mean, 73,000, that's a city. That's like a decent city right there of forced labor.
Provide labor for the nearby mine and the local logging operation, which was thriving at the time. A railway was constructed using the prisoners to ship coal and timber out of the area. The Gulag's perimeter consisted of tall barbed wire fences, watchtowers, and armed guards. Beyond the perimeter, there were regular armed patrols accompanied by guard dogs. Soldiers would accompany work details, ensuring no escape attempts were successful, though the reality was that there was nowhere for the prisoners to escape to. Vorkuta was in the middle of nowhere. The land surrounding Vorkuta, teeming with wolves, was the Soviet authorities' natural barrier between the Gulag prisoners and their freedom. And the climate in northern Russia was brutally cold, with extremely short summers and long winters. In Vorkuta, for 3 months out of the year, the sun did not set. Constant daylight.
So it's like, yeah, you can escape. Escape means obviously rolling the dice, but most likely you're gonna die. Otherwise, you get the wolves on you, or most likely just freeze to death. So that's really what it is. It's like, do you want to live, or do you want to continue your life as this forced labor, or die, pretty much.
It ensued as another form of torture provided by nature herself. This phenomenon is known as polar days. The regime at the Gulag was harsh. Prisoners were faced with 16-hour days of hard labor and an underwhelming diet of rye bread and buckwheat porridge called kasha. The lack of food was subsidized with potatoes and a little meat or fish. Prisoners often took to eating rats, stray dogs, or cats that might have inevitably wandered into the Gulag.
I mean, that sounds like what we hear from, prisons, like trench warfare. It's like you never get enough food, so you just eat the vermin, and that is like a treat almost.
Extra food was possible if you hit your unrealistically high work quota, but in order to do so, the prisoners had to work so hard that it had an adverse effect on their already deteriorating health. The result? Some prisoners literally worked themselves to death. The sheer hunger, excessive work, and living conditions often caused illness or death, so some prisoners resorted to getting admitted to the hospital where conditions were better and they could recover for a while. In order to get there, they resorted to cutting off their fingers, reopening healing wounds, or even drinking kerosene. Some prisoners of war...
it makes sense. You'd rather go through that physical pain and go into it, because you're gonna be pain. You're gonna be in pain anyways. Might as well do it in a hospital. So I guess I don't know if a lot of people fake injuries, but obviously, I mean, what you would think that it would have to be a very noticeable injury, something visible, broken bone or something, to be able to get that kind of care.
War from World War II were kept at the camp. This included the English trader Reginald Pleasance, who had joined the Nazi Waffen SS as a sharpshooter. He spent 6 years in the camp before being released to the British authorities. And during the Korean conflict of the 1950s, it was rumored that a number of captured American pilots were also imprisoned at Vorkuta. Among the vast number of prisoners, American military personnel were no exception. One notable example being Homer Harold Cox, a U.S. military policeman who was arrested whilst off duty in East Berlin in 1949.
It's interesting because I haven't heard a lot about Americans in gulags. So I'm interested to see that perspective is. I wonder why those stories maybe aren't more famous, or maybe just I haven't been paying attention enough.
Cox wouldn't be free of the Soviet tyranny until 1953. The American prisoner John H. Noble reported as many as 3,000 American prisoners in the Soviet camps. The freedom Noble gained came into being once his note was delivered to his German relatives. This note was then passed on to the United States authorities, and President Dwight D. Eisenhower intervened to get him freed. The corruption within the Gulag, combined with the atrocious conditions, became so bad that in 1953 the prisoners went on strike. One of the key leaders of the strike was John H. Noble.
Whoa, okay, so the workers, the soldiers themselves are going on strike. Because what were they told that that's not what this kind of camp? This wasn't this camp. This camp wasn't like that. And they're like, this is terrible. Like, so we're not at war.
They demanded such things as lower production targets, wages, and to be allowed to write more than 2 letters a year. At first, the authorities tolerated this act of rebellion, being that it was relatively peaceful. Moscow sent commissioners to negotiate with the prisoners. Some minor.
Okay. So this is by the prisoners, not the guards. You don't think they'd care at all? Why would they care? I guess it's a strike. I don't know. Can't treat it like they need these people. They need these people to work, right? It's not an extermination camp necessarily, like you would have seen with a Nazi concentration camp, which would happen at the end. There first were labor camps like this, and then turned into that. But these are more designed for labor camps. They're just using these undesirables or whatever you want to, they want to refer to them as that labor force.
Concessions were made, including being granted the privilege of being allowed to write 2 letters a month and the right to 1 visitor a year. But the prisoners felt this was not enough and refused to go back to work. After 2 weeks, the warden's patience had run out. He sent in the army to arrest the ringleaders of the strike. The situation turned violent, and the army openly fired on the prisoners. It is estimated that over 60 prisoners were killed and hundreds more were injured. Afterwards, conditions at the Gulag slowly improved, and in 1962, the camp was permanently closed down, with most of its inmates released. As for the Gulag system itself, the permanent dismantling began during the 1950s. This was in part due to the economic and political viability of maintaining the gulags diminishing. Political reform played a key role in the regression of the camps, with Nikita Khrushchev coming to power after the death of Stalin.
That's what I figure. I figured gulags would be gone, pretty much. With the rise of Khrushchev, who had this de-Stalinization process. But, I mean, if it's going clear into, further, I mean, you can see it's 62, so it's starting to, cool down that way. But even before Khrushchev, it would have lightened up. It said, till 62, I think?
Khrushchev began a series of reforms known as de-Stalinization when he came to power in 1958. Finally, in the early 1960s, the last remaining gulags were closed down, Vorkuta being one of the last to close.
Interesting. So I wonder if what population-wise this was like, how it compared to some of the other gulags. They say 70,000 there. So we're interested in how that compares. But I wonder if this story, the fame of this, isn't necessarily of the conditions, but of the uprising, right, that happened there. Let's talk about it more, though. All right, yeah, like I was saying, I wonder, again, how this compares to other gulags. I don't know really of any gulags by name, so the Vorkuta, interesting seeing that, but again, how big they were. They were open way longer than I thought, as going from, 22 to 62? Is that what they said? So you're a good 30 years of this kind of hard labor, and seeing how, things like this are a big tool, of it could be a tool of authoritarian regimes, right? And because you obviously want to get out of those, and they see it as like these are criminals, but it's also like giving back to society because they're doing, this type of hard labor. And you can find some awful way to justify the use of these things, which people often have done with camps and programs like this all throughout history, right? Pretty awful that it has to happen there, but something like this too, with it being, relatively like no one was invading the Soviet Union to end these camps. It's not like the liberating of concentration camps from World War II from Nazi Germany. You know what I mean? Although a lot of those camps were not known, right? If you know the existence of these types of like extermination camps, concentration camps, any of the major ones, were very much under wraps, and a lot of them did not. Their existence wasn't even known until armies and stuff physically came across them and are like, what is this? Like, I didn't know these exist. And once that happened, then you end that. But You see those things happening, but then you see them continue after World War II with the Soviet Union, with so many that people, former Soviet soldiers, have probably been put into these camps, and vice versa, Germans into these Soviet camps. That after World War II, you see that still going on after those kind of atrocities, right? And again, it was a powerful tool especially for Joseph Stalin, as you saw there, and in the early years of the Soviet Union, when they were still kind of establishing themselves that way and using it as a way to instill fear and try to create unity through fear, to avoid these types of things. So yeah, these things are, people meme about them, but we got to understand how seriously bad these things were. And I think we need to understand that when we talk about these gulags, because no one would be laughing when you get there, right? Anyway, great job by Simple History. Love their animation. Great story there. I didn't know anything about the specific gulag, so that was really cool to check out. Original video link is down below, so make sure you check that out and support Simple History. And if you haven't subbed to my channel, I'd love to have you around. Join our Discord server. You can talk with thousands of other friendly history fans, and you can talk about all kinds of things there. Check out my gaming channel on Twitch, Mr. Terry History, or Mr. Terry Gaming here on YouTube, and links to some other fun stuff down below as well. All right, and with that, we'll see you next time. Stay out of the gulag.